time for another special edition of the One More and I'm Out of Here podcast. Hi, everyone. I'm Dan Carroll. We are coming to you today from the Varsity Sports Bar and Grill on Beachmont Avenue in Anderson Township. And Rob Herking, hard to believe, it was 1 year ago, right around this time, when we started the very first podcast of One More and I'm Out of Here.
Dan, thank you. It's hard to believe you did not show up on time. I am joking, and I thought we'd see you at the next anniversary when you actually did arrive. 4 o'clock means what to you?
That headset looks awesome, by the way. The way you got that mounted on your
I have a hard time listening to your voice in person, let alone through earphones. Dan, Jason, how are you doing? You bowled today? Should be an entertaining episode. A lot of bowlers.
It was not a great bowling outing.
You got to witness a 300 game, though.
I did.
That's pretty cool.
I think I bowled pretty well for not picking up a bowling ball in a year. 184, 174, 164. I was fairly consistent.
I'd take that. I'd be just fine with that.
So here we are. April Fool's Day.
With a bunch of firemen and cops bowling, did they put the gutters up for you guys?
No, dickhead.
Well, I didn't know. I mean, you guys always get the bigger budgets.
The guardrails.
Because
You got to have the guardrails up there.
Unlike cops.
Get the bigger budgets.
I mean, you guys stand outside a burning building for 20 minutes assessing the situation, whereas law enforcement will run into a burglary or an active shooter situation without any hesitation.
They will run into a burning building and throw fire extinguishers, and then the firemen come and bring them out.
Well, you gotta wait till you guys wake up, finish breakfast,
get
dinner and shit.
So now I'm gonna say that I'm saying that in jest because we are blessed with having a guest who's been around the city of Cincinnati for a very long time, a very distinguished career, and has, I'm going to say, fought the man a ton and not afraid to. But we have Cincinnati's Fraternal Order of Police Lodge 69's president, Dan Hils, in the house with us. And I can't thank you enough for coming in.
The main man at the FOP, as I like to say on the radio.
Be careful. Don't pump up my ego, especially my wife won't like that. She'll take a cold bucket of water to it if need be.
No, you have done a ton of great work for the guys and gals that work for the Cincinnati Police Department, and going up against city administration and fighting for your people and making sure that they have the right environment that they need to work in, and a huge undertaking. And I can only imagine, I haven't been there, what you have to, when you were on the street, still working. You're retired now, correct?
I'm retired, but just so you know, as soon as you're elected to president of the FOP, in most cities, probably the size of Cincinnati and larger, you get what's called put on release, and the union becomes your full-time job. So right. I haven't been on the street in quite some time. I'm a little rusty. I do a little auxiliary work for a small village, but that's more like what we call detail work,
right.
More like security work.
But so you have your normal shift, and then as you were gearing up, let me back up. As you're gearing up to like, okay, I want to be the FOP president, you're starting to grab some shit. Then you get put on relief to be the FOP president, and that's your full-time job. But you have all the men and women on the streets coming to you day in, day out with issues, whether they may be small or they may be big. That phone has got to be on fire.
Yeah, I mean, it runs in stretches, just like I guess everybody else's job. But I've had at times over 1,000 people in the union. Right now we're low on policemen, so we're low on policemen in the union. We're right around 950, and I get lucky days where it doesn't ring too much, and then I get days where it rings constantly. And it's something you got to decide. That's what you wanted to do. That you wanted to be there. You wanted to be that earpiece for all the men and women that do the job. And it's been a labor of love for me. It really has been.
You have done, in my opinion, just what watching from the media. I've met you a couple different times in passing, but I don't know you. But seeing you on the news and seeing different press conferences and whatever, I feel, and I don't work for the city of Cincinnati, I feel that you've done a great job and a great justice for the people that you represent. So thank you for being here.
Well, if you keep talking so good about me, I think I'll just be quiet and sip on my beer. There's no reason to debate. There's no real reason to debate when somebody's saying all that nice stuff about you. Look, this is where I guess I use a little humor and say it's all smoke and mirrors. But I'm proud of the job I've done. I'm rounding third and headed for home, as Nuxie used to say.
Old left-hander.
Yeah, I'm the first FOP president to serve into retirement. And I knew when I ran in the last time I ran that I could only stay active for about 5 months of the 24-month term because we got a thing, I'm sure you firemen are familiar with it too, called DROP, Deferred Retirement Option. And I was nearing the end of my deferred retirement option. But I wanted to finish my drop time. I wanted to finish my career in the position, and I wanted to stay on a little bit longer, and it's been very rewarding. But it's at the same time, it'll be 8 years, and it's time for fresh faces and new ideas and all that stuff. But just to speak very briefly of those smoke and mirrors I just mentioned before, I decided when I was running that I wanted to be a lot more public and use the media, use social media. Even though I'm the biggest tech dummy you ever want to meet. My daughter, my late daughter, Megan, actually helped me put together my Facebook page, and I should be into Twitter and all this other stuff, but I'm just not real good at that stuff. But I have mastered the Facebook, and I got a lot of folks that follow me in Facebook, and I found using public pressure to point out when public officials are doing law enforcement wrong and doing the community wrong, that can be very effective at times. I've butted heads. You were talking about I butted heads with the city managers and the mayors and the police chiefs and those things, and always doing it with an eye of looking out for the guys and gals that are out there doing the tough work. My work's a piece of cake.
And it's not just the day in, day out stuff that you have to do as president of the FOP. Of course, you got to deal with people like me too, and all the media requests that you get. And I got to give you props for that because you have never shied away from that. There's been times when there have been FOP people who have been in the same position you've been in, when trying to get them to say something has been like pulling teeth. And I think it does. I think it, from my perspective, that you get a lot more mileage out of talking to people like me, talking to people like Cunningham, doing all the television and radio requests and everything like that. When you have, we had an administration in this town at times that wants to hide from the media and keep things quiet. And we had a city manager one time who kept saying, I don't want to come on your show. I don't want to step on any toes. Well, that's what you're there for. Come out and let people know what the heck is going on. I mean, I would think that's one thing we've learned in this town, that you come out and you tell people what's going on, and then you want to talk about police-community relations. That's how you have police-community relations.
Exactly. I've struggled with at times, how long it takes for the police administration or city administration, or at times the union to speak up to one way or another. There's been several times where I spoke up and it took a lot of flack for it. But in the long run, I think it proved to be the right thing to do. I remember you brought up Mr. Cunningham, and me and Mr. Cunningham have a really good relationship. And I remember when the very, very sad incident happened with the young man Kyle Plush in his car when he expired in his vehicle, and I saw them coming down on the policemen that were dispatched there, and I started to speak up for those policemen. And that's the one time when Willie said to me, he goes, Dan, you're pushing it too far here. You probably want to, like, I think he was suggesting I just kind of hang low on that one. I said, no, Willie, I think you're going to find out that there's a lot more going on here than meets the eye, and that the policemen, most importantly, the policemen didn't do anything wrong. They had information. They took that information that they had. They believed something totally different was going on than what was actually going on. And one line that I said over and over again is, either one of those policemen knew that young man was in that car and was having difficulty breathing, they would have broke every window of every minivan within a mile of where they thought that was to find that young man. And so tragedies happen. Tragedies happen every day in the world, and policemen and firemen are around those tragedies. And when the response doesn't turn out the way we hoped or dreamed it would, too often they just want to start laying blame on those emergency responders. Hey, when we really do something wrong, I'll say when we really do something wrong. And in that case there, they had received poor information, and they responded with the information that they had received, and that I defended them. And I remember some months later, Willie said, "You know what? You were right. You were right to back those guys." And that on that we did agree that time.
Dan, I've noticed, and we've talked about it before, the 10-second videos where you see police being assaultive or combative with somebody, and it's a 10-second clip released on media, the mainstream media, or in the news. Talk radio gets a hold of it, and they start blasting the cops. That irritates me, and I'm sure it irritates you when you know there's more behind the story and you know the lead up to it as well. Are you a proponent of getting all the information out there, what I believe Nashville did on the school shooting down there at the Catholic school or Christian school, where I think the body cams released a day or two later and it kind of quelled everybody's thoughts? Or are you old school where it's like, let's withhold it, let's get all our ducks in a row, dot the I's, cross the T's before we get this out there? Because it just seems all it does is give the mainstream media, the pundits, the loudmouths on the radio, the opportunity to have copy, story, and talk for another 50 minutes in a 3-hour show.
Now, I mean, you actually nailed it, and I think you know the answer already. It is, you have to get out. In today's media world, you have to get out. I mean, let's go to the number one example, Ferguson, Missouri. Hands up, don't shoot. Hands up, don't shoot was a flat-out lie. It was a bunch of bull crap. And the police department, and a lack of a media or a lack of a union there, sat back and did nothing while they went around and said, hands up, don't shoot. And it ended up turning into, some of the worst rioting the country had seen in a number of years, because we let hands up, don't shoot be a narrative. And it was all terrible. We actually employ a group out of Columbus, as a plug for them, a Mark Weaver, Communications Council. He's a former speechwriter. I think he wrote Reagan's farewell speech. And Mark's a very smart attorney. He gives a lot of classes in FOP conferences and stuff. I went to one of his conferences, and there he's a lawyer and taught me some $20 words. I'm probably getting them wrong, but I think it's primacy is where you have to get the narrative out first. So if the first thing you ever heard about Dan Carroll is that Dan Carroll's a great guy, you're going to tend to believe that Dan Carroll's a great guy, and it's going to take you a whole lot of evidence to turn that around. On the other hand, if the first thing you hear that
stop laughing over there,
that Dan Carroll is the son of a gun, it's going to take a whole lot of evidence to turn that around. So
you're allowed to say son of a bitch.
I know. I just it's hard with the.
Keep it clean, brother. Keep it clean.
I'm used to the radio, so that's one of the things that I promised to do, that I would get that word out. And what's one of the things that drives the police administration bananas, and the city administration double bananas, is when I go and I get the word out first. Example, when some of our bravest officers, the unit that goes out, and apprehension unit, fugitive apprehension unit, they they were over in Kentucky and knocking on a door mostly to just get information about where a murder suspect is, and then he comes running at him with a gun. They defended themselves. I want to say within 2 hours of that happening, I had enough information. Could I go out there and tell every little part of it? No, but I could tell the basics and get that narrative out right away. That's just one example of what it is that needs to be done by police union leadership going forward in this country. So we don't have hands up, don't shoot anymore, because the city administrations aren't going to do it. They're political. The police administrations are just about as political, if not sometimes more so, because they work and get appointed by those politicians. So you need the person or people that work for the police officers themselves to get out in front of things and say, no, here's what basically happened. And I told you before, wouldn't mind a free plug with a group of lawyers I work for. I work for a group of attorneys, and they come under a name of Frontline Advisors. And one of the agencies that they have now is Middletown, and Middletown just had a shooting. And we went up there, and I gave the basic facts. They hired me to be that big mouth, go right up to the cameras and say, hey, here's what I'm getting, here's what I have. And my initial statements, I probably was about 90% correct. But as I was telling them what I believed happened, I would use that word. I believe this is what happened. The information I have now is this is what happened. I would never, ever intentionally say something that wasn't true. I just say what I know at the time, because the police chief, the city manager of Middletown, and the prosecutors, they're not going to come out until they're like 125% sure of each and everything they say. And by that time, the people out on the street, they're able to spread every rumor and lie they can imagine. So that's why, working with this, they have the philosophies to get out there, get ahead, get proactive, and defend cops. You have to defend cops. If you want to have a civilization left in America 10 years from now, 5 years from now, I don't know, things are moving so fast. You're going to have to decide that you're going to defend policemen, even when they're not perfect. If they're criminal, if they're evil, if they're bad, the hell with them. But if cops are responding, and I always say that the cops are responding to chaos. That's what we expect of them. We create all this, the world creates chaos. And we throw 2 police officers on a radio run and say, come out of this, and come out of this without a speck of dirt. It's not realistic. It's nowhere near realistic. And so, body-worn cameras, and am I talking too much?
No, you're good, man.
No, but it's a perfect segue, because I'm going to bring in a guest that we have virtually, who's a dispatcher. I'm not going to say where he's at, because the location changes every time I hear it, even though I know where he is. But we're gonna bring in Jonathan Bates from the Failure to Stop podcast. He was getting a little bit angry.
That is not accurate. Hold on, we got an echo here. Hold on a second.
Is that my end or your end? Let me double check it.
You got to love the technical stuff.
Still got an echo now?
I've got no echo. We had no echo originally.
If you don't have an echo, then I'm not worried about it. I can bear with an echo. Hello to the chief of the Fraternal Police. Hello.
No chief, but go on.
Okay, I don't know
He prefers the term president. El Presidente.
I'll be honest with you.
I prefer Dan.
I'm always the second banana, so I thought I was going to be. Keith told me I was going to be like the number one guy today, and I guess I've been April Fool. So.
Well, you didn't confirm, but
I told you I would.
But you didn't deny either. So we love you anyway.
I'm 38. Do something that's going to happen. I'm not like a millennial where you have to text 5 minutes before to make sure it's going to happen.
Welcome.
Good point.
Well,
but I think it's a great dialogue to have with a tenured police officer, FOP president, and then you have a dispatcher who has dealt with some things. And I mean, I've listened to your podcast, heard your things. So hearing what he would expect as an FOP president or as a police officer, let's just take the FOP part out. As a police officer, what do you want to hear from a dispatcher? So I figured this would be a good segue for both of you.
You want me to talk
go
now?
ahead.
Or, yeah, all right.
Go ahead, yeah.
Well, ultimately, what we always hope for and usually got was calm. There were dispatchers back in my day when I was younger and on the street that were just mind blowing good. You had dispatchers that could handle, a foot pursuit in one district and a officer needs assistance in another one, and be able to keep their calm. And so naturally, when you're out there on the streets, and especially young policemen, I'm not going to claim to be one of those people that can always control their adrenaline. Sometimes the adrenaline rush would get a little better of me. So I might come out with my car number, something like 402, right? You ever heard that, sir? that excited to yell of the car number. The really good dispatchers would come back with 402. Go ahead.
Yep.
And so they had a natural way of calming you down and trying to get you to keep it smooth, keep it low enough that you could continue to communicate, because our dispatchers and again, the ones I knew several really well, we used to all drink together in the mornings way back in the day when we get off third shift. But a lot of those dispatchers, they were like family.
It's the best time to drink, isn't it?
I was kind of hoping he'd stay after we got off third shift.
Yeah, exactly. That's when it was. When
Not before we clocked in on
first.
first.
When we got off third shift, we would gather and some of the biggest parties I've ever seen, police parties, would happen after third shift happened at 6 a.m.
Oh man, this podcast is going to get good.
Yes, bacon and eggs and beer. We would do it often, and dispatchers would always be there with us.
So John, your typical shift, are you doing 10s, 12s, 8s? What's your typical shift?
Well, I work 8 hours. And, when I get off of work, to be honest with you, I mean, it's great that you guys got a good enough relationship with your dispatchers that you go out for beer with them afterwards. Where I work, there's a kind of a cultural difference there. We're on the same team, but I guess, when you punch out, you're kind of on a different team. I don't normally get invited to go drink beer with anybody. That could just be me. Maybe the other dispatchers are going to drink beer with them, but
you should move to Cincinnati.
I didn't hear what you said. I'm sorry.
You should move to Cincinnati.
Move to Cincinnati. Maybe I could handle that. But it is hard being calm. And the reason for that is why it's hard for us, and why I'm glad to hear you say that, dispatchers can have a calming effect on you, is because we can also be really pretty damned irritating. And it's partially because we care about police officers and we don't know what the hell's going on with you guys. You can be out there talking to someone and everything's calm and you're normal on the radio. And then 5 minutes later, when we're doing a status check, all of a sudden, you're not answering. And we're like, what the heck just happened to this guy? And he's in a foot pursuit and he dropped his radio and he needs help, or he can't talk to us, or he's not able to. And, it's really hard to stay calm in those situations because, and I've said this on other podcasts before, when police officers get into the business of being police officers, when they go to the academy and all this, it's all about being a cop. They have their frame of reference is all about what their career is, right? And it's being a police officer. When a dispatcher becomes a dispatcher, something that's in their frame of mind is the police officers. So we're always thinking about you guys all the time because it's our job to look after you, take care of you, do what you need us to do, and support you in the field. So for me, it's tough because police officers think about police officers and I think about police officers. So sometimes I feel like nobody thinks about the dispatchers but me. But I appreciate
and they don't think about the firemen because you make that very clear on failure to stop.
Now hold on one second.
Very clear, sir.
Hold on one second. So thank you for saying kind word about dispatchers. But did you not see that I just put together a whole show in which we had a barricaded subject and we brought in a firefighter to talk to the guy?
Yes. I did. You were the best, John. You are the best.
John, no offense, man. I'd rather hear radio when I was cruising a patrol car.
He's got a one more and I'm out of here koozie.
Yeah, I didn't hear what he said, but I knew it. I knew it was something that hurt my feelings. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's derogatory, of course. Dan, did you ever? I was a cop in the 90s, and what he is talking about where they lose, you don't hear him, and he's in a foot pursuit. Back in the 90s, we didn't lose our radios typically, but we had repeaters in the car. And if somebody failed, in Goshen, I had to hit it or Bethel and take off running after somebody. And sometimes you get so excited to get out and chase somebody at 21, 22 years of age, you forget to hit that damn button.
Yep.
and they lose it. I know Claremont County, those dispatchers would send an army. Did you guys? You guys probably had better equipment there than Claremont County.
I'm gonna do a little bit of guessing, and that is that out in that kind of rural community at the time, you might not have had the actual repeaters, towers that were all over the place that we had in Cincinnati. We could communicate from our handhelds, if you will, the radios that had a mic on our shoulder, from just about anywhere in the city. They'd have to turn on. I remember it was a big deal back when I was a young policeman in District 3, which was the west side. They'd have to turn on like this special tower to talk to you when you were in Sailor Park. But other than that, you weren't like communicating. The signal wasn't going through your car to get to the tower. You were going directly with the tower. So wherever you were, you had communications.
That's been an issue with the West Side for a long time. I've heard. I think they're AOL still sending the 500 free hours of internet discs over there. Have they remedied that since?
Well, we've had major issues since I've been the FOP president. When they went to the, see if I remember these terms, the 500 megahertz. Does that sound right? And when they first
now we're at 800.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, you're right. See, I knew I'd get something wrong. When they first switched to that band, they were having a lot of different problems. One of the problems they were having was with female officers. The higher pitches would come out wrong, or same thing when men would be pumped up and scream on the radio that wasn't picking up clearly what they were saying. And I, as one of those times you talk about pushing back against the man, I started coming out and criticizing the radios. And a prideful moment, I actually I got called and requested by Motorola came to town. Some big brass came to town. Am I allowed to talk about a major corporation here? Or
Absolutely.
So the radios weren't working. So I put out to my cops. I said, give me pictures with your kids. This little propaganda move that I came up with, a sign. So I had all these cute little kids and they're holding a sign and said, Motorola, make my daddy's radio safe, or something. They all
it's like a construction zone slow down type of thing.
Yeah. So I posted these things on social media and Motorola went ballistic. And next thing I know, I heard there was a bunch of Motorola executives in town. And it just so happened that day we had a shooting. I think it was a non-fatal shooting. The police, one of our policemen shot somebody, and these Motorola executives were there. And they wanted to meet with me, and I said, tough. I said, I'm down at criminal investigation section. We have a policeman just shot somebody, and they're like, where's criminal investigation section? So I gave them the address. So they came down there. I think it was 3 of them. And the guy that was in charge, I could tell he was a little more common sense. But another guy, he was really irritated. And, he said something to the effect like, you ever been sued by a major corporation or something to the effect? He was threatening a lawsuit. And I just was like in the middle of separation and divorce and all that stuff. I was eating ramen noodles and I like it. Dude, I'm sorry. you
get that piece of paper with that judgment on it. Yeah. You ain't getting much other than that piece of paper, baby.
You might get a couple bags of ramen noodles and some old gym shoes or something. So that was my banging heads with,
I am also bulletproof to lawsuits, so I know exactly how you feel.
I am as well, but my wife is not.
So if anybody that, and I know Dan Hils hasn't listened to it yet, and I pushed it before we got on to this podcast, pushed him toward yours. Your guys' breakdown, John, between you and Drew Breezy, the comm center and the way you break down things. So like with him working with the guys and gals on the streets right now, what would be your best message to send to the FOP president of the city of Cincinnati Police Department as a dispatcher? What should he send to his people to make your job easier and make their job easier?
You know,
if you could say something.
That's a good question. And, normally that sort of thing is pretty far, outside of my area of expertise. I guess I would say, listen to go down and talk to your dispatchers in your center. If you walk in there and again, I'm not being glib or sarcastic. I just don't know where you're at or how important you are, but go down there, physically go in the center and just say, like, tell me what you guys are seeing. Like, don't do it with their supervisor there. Try to find someone who looks happy to talk to you, because some people just aren't going to want to do that when you go in the comm center, and just say, like, what are the actual problems? Like, when you're having difficulty talking to officers, what is it? Like, what do you need, down here? Do you need more equipment? Do you need an instant recall recorder? Do you need us to just tell the guys to talk directly to their microphones? Is it something with an extender? Is it something with a repeater? Do we need more towers? Like, is it a technology problem? Or, like, what about this? Is it an etiquette thing? Like, radio etiquette is almost a cultural thing where, like, you can have good radio etiquette, like people communicate well, and then you have one person who maybe comes in there a lateral from some other department and they have their own ways of doing things, and they kind of infect other people with bad habits, like not waiting to be acknowledged or whatever. Just go in there and ask your local dispatchers there in Cincinnati, just like, what drives you nuts? What's one thing maybe that I could talk to my guys about, or what's a piece of equipment that I could lobby for, or just anything. Being the fact that you'll go in there and ask them, that you'll ask a local dispatcher, what's the particular problem, that you care enough to say you're part of the conversation, you're part of my police officers being safe. It's going to mean the world to them that you'll even just take the time to listen to them. So just having a conversation is really just all I would say. Dispatchers, we get left out of everything, whether it's training or, being told beforehand when police officers go do something high risk or whatever. Just go in and talk to them, make them feel like they're part of the process. It'll not only, it will, you can possibly get something that's going to make it better for your police officers, but you're going to strengthen your working relationship. You're going to help them see you as a police officer, as a human being, and you can see them as a human being. It just makes everything better when it's in person. I've said this a couple of times now, but the radio adds 10 pounds of snark, right? And most dispatchers like me are about 10 pounds overweight on snark already. So you just go and have that face-to-face interaction for 10 minutes. You don't have to bring them pizza. You don't have to bring them coffee. You don't have to do any of that stuff. Just go talk to them.
You
those are excellent points.
And you and I have had this conversation on Comm Center or even outside of Comm Center of, we need to incorporate fire, police. We need to incorporate our dispatchers into a lot of these trainings that we do. And when I worked for a different entity where we had a separate dispatch center, it wasn't a county dispatch center. It was just our own local thing. For a little while, they made them ride with the police. They made them ride with the fire. But
I
it was
ride-alongs with sheriff's deputies, but not with fire, because we don't have professional services where I'm at. It's all volunteer. So go ahead.
But ours was ran by the police department, so they did not know fire nomenclature. So they did it for maybe a year or two, maybe 3. But we'd only get a couple dispatchers in, whatever. It wasn't a big turnover, but it was to try to get, and through Failure to Stop and our podcast, we poke fun back and forth, and these two to each side of me get screwed over because I'm the fireman in it. You guys are cops or dispatchers or whatever, so you poke fun at the firemen. But to get us all to work together, we could make so many things so much better by letting everybody know the same playing field. Everybody's playing from the same playbook. Yeah, you may have different codes. Dan Hils has different codes, excuse me, that he uses, and we use different wording that we use. But once you ride with them and see it, it's going to make everything so much easier for that dispatcher sitting in a dark room grabbing a 911 call where there's an infant non-breather, or, oh my God, my baby daddy just shot my boyfriend, or whatever. I mean, it all comes around to the same, but you have to know the nomenclature and get everybody on the same page.
Word of the day or something, nomenclature?
First of all, I love it. We can have $10 words. That's fine. But
You use words that you have no idea what they mean too.
So, but if you say it authoritative enough, it has the meaning that you intend.
This is why I say that Dan Hils. This is why I say it's three stepbrothers sitting at a bar drinking beers, because we argue all the time.
Go ahead, John. But I do have a follow-up question in regards to something that was commented on, and I'm looking at your studio now, and I'm remembering all the comm centers I've been in. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to say, dispatchers, okay, so we're going to put a pin in the whole making fun of firefighters for 5 seconds. I guess I could do that, but
5 seconds. Yes.
Firefighters are extremely important, and dispatchers need to do it right along with firefighters, because dispatching for fire is way more technical than dispatching for police. Like, you guys have all these different types of apparatuses, knowing the difference between, a tanker and a tender. Like, it's not even, sometimes that's a regional thing where it means something here or where it means something there. Like, ask someone what a rescue unit is in various agencies and they'll tell you different things. So dispatchers need to right along with fire, because when we're getting calls about structure fires, particularly where hazmat is involved or just where any kind of mutual aid would need to happen, it's incredibly important that a dispatcher needs to know what needs to go right away. And like, you're going to have to, the word's slipping me right now, but like, for where I am right now, like I said, it's all volunteers. Nomenclature for it. I have to know like which agencies have the ability to repressurize SCBA tanks, because that's a special machine that does that, and not every agency has that. So for firefighting dispatching, it's a lot more technical. And I'll tell you right now, like, I could go to a lot of agencies and I could dispatch police in this area. I could do it. I could probably walk in and within 8 hours, I could be doing that pretty competently. I could not go to a nearby agency and dispatch a fire without getting somebody killed. It's not that easy to do. He has a follow-up question for me, but I guess he disappeared.
No, they're all excellent points. But when I listen to and some of the scenarios that Dan was talking about, Jonathan, before you got on, and from my perspective, being in the news, it's always those situations. Look, you try to imagine every contingency possible, but it's the ones where the situations are unique and they're unlike anything that you've encountered before. So you try to train, you try to prepare, you try to do everything you can to deal with every situation. But Dan, you can speak to this, I think, because it's the ones where things happen where all the combining elements have never been there before, given the time of day, the weather. It could be anything. All these different factors kind of come in to make for a one-off unique situation. And maybe you don't handle it the exact best way you can. But then you've got people like me, you got politicians who want to criticize and say, "Oh, we're unprepared. We need more training." No, we're doing everything we can, but it's impossible to prepare for every imaginable and unimaginable scenario there is.
Well, the ultimate unimaginable scenario, and the one where communications completely broke down between police and fire, is, of course, one of the most important days in American history, and that's 9/11. Firemen and police weren't able to talk together. The communications completely broke down with firemen in the towers. How many more lives could have been saved? How many more firemen's lives could have been saved if they would have got the word to go ahead and evacuate the towers? There was a total breakdown. But who, before 9/11, could have ever imagined 9/11?
Right.
So part of it is, practice makes perfect. And when you're talking about a busy inner city like the city of Cincinnati, I think that's one of the reasons our dispatchers got really good at what they did and really good at communicating with us. You're talking about the communication between dispatchers and dispatchers and the cops. It's been a long time since I've been out on street. Like I said, been doing this thing now with the union for going on 8 years. But just before that, I was day shift in District 3, busiest district in the city. And still, I have generally good things to say about our dispatchers. There's always that one person here that's got the channel that day, and you say, "Oh no, not so and so," or something like that. but in general, it's really good. And not to bring a downer and telling a story, but you mentioned the pizzas, bringing pizzas or whatever. We just recently had a police officer, a lady. I didn't know her real well, but a sweet lady from what everybody said, that took her own life. And when everybody was getting up and speaking about her, there was a number of dispatchers that talked about how she would call in and say, hey, sorry, so-and-so talked to you that way or was gruff or whatever. And then they talked about one day that there was a whole bunch of pizzas there. And they thought, oh, one of the reliefs, either, District 5, District 3, somebody brought us pizzas. And they said, no, that was just Olivia. She brought them all on her own. And so, again, we don't have a perfect relationship. Nobody has a perfect relationship. You talk about police and fire. I always like to tell two stories together whenever I talk about police and fire. And one, these gentlemen just got to meet my much better half now, my wife now, who is just retired from the Cincinnati Police Department. And
congratulations, by the way. I saw that.
Yeah,
I know she was here earlier. Congratulations, that's huge.
She met with a friend, but she always tells, she had a legendary coach, guy named Bill Fagan. Everybody loved Bill, and the two of them had a dumpster fire one night, and he says, "Grab your fire extinguisher." She's a brand new rookie. Grab your fire extinguisher. Go put that out. So he goes and she puts that out, and gets back in the car, and he goes, "All right, now call the fire department." And she goes, "Well, Bill, I just put the fire out," and they worked overnights, and he said, "Never ever pass up a chance to wake up the fireman." And so she called the fireman.
Not shocked.
But that, that's the funny story. But then I always
establish dumpster command. Absolutely.
Establish dumpster command.
Well, that story is like 31 years old, because that's when my wife had just started on the police department. The story I always followed up with is a story about Katie Conway, and I'd know the story third hand or something as well. But Katie was ambushed by a thug that intended on killing her. Shot her a number of times. I forget how many bullets she actually ended up with. She ended up having to retire because of her injuries. But she was able to.
She was shot at point blank range in her own cruiser.
In her own cruiser.
Yeah.
The guy hit her with.
Flagged her down.
Hit her with a boom box. Now nobody knows what a boom box is anymore. But he hit her with a boom box.
About this big.
This is like 20 years ago, maybe more. He hit her with a boom box and pushed her over and shot her
with her own gun.
No,
it wasn't her gun.
No, he had a gun. He shot her 4 or 5 times.
False media.
But she
so
returned fire.
She ends up shooting him once and killing him. But it took a little while for everybody to find him and find her. And when they found her, the story I've heard, be it second, third, fourth hand, whatever it was that she was in the back of the rescue unit, and being in the back of our paramedic units in Cincinnati. Is next best to only being at University Hospital. That we have great paramedics there that do outstanding work. So we can kid around all the time. But the point is, she said, "I'm going to die." And the story I heard is the old veteran paramedic said to her in a very hard, stern, fatherly way, because she was a young kid cop. He said, "You're not allowed to die in the back of my unit." And she's like, "Yes, sir." And sure enough, they got her through. And that's the way we really are. We're cut from the same cloth. We like to kid around. We like to wake you guys up in the middle of the night,
bust balls,
and do all that type of stuff. And that's all fun stuff. But we know that we're there for each other. And I really see very little separation between us and fire.
So something that has come up, because I'm a huge follower of Failure to Stop with Jonathan and Drew Breezy, Eric Tanzi. We've been talking a bunch about mental health and getting the cops the help they need, the firemen the help they need, and I want to try to incorporate at some point, and we'll talk once we're done, once we're not streaming anymore, but try to incorporate some things for dispatchers, for us. I know Drew Breezy's got some big things, that he's working on. That I'll explain that to you, but I know for your your I'm going to call it lordship, your fraternal order, your guys, people need to talk. And we've talked about on the fireside, we need to talk. And even if it's not even public safety, you need to talk. So trying to get that mental health awareness out, because that's been a big thing in the last, at least on the fireside, the last 5 years, I've seen a big deal, big push. But I want to connect you and John and Drew, get all you guys connected together. But I think it's apropos to say that you have to talk, whether you are a businessman or whatever. But obviously, with what we're doing, I mean, I'm connected with you in the public service sector. He's got public service. There's a lot of shit out there. And then, but what John's saying, like the dispatchers are kind of just pushed out. I agree with him. We really don't include them in anything that we do. And it's a shame because we can do trainings, but we can also do, mental health trainings as, get everybody on board.
Or your
because
they
deal with
debriefings too. Just debriefing an incident together,
There you go. Exactly. You have a big incident. So that'll lead me into where I wanted to go. This stuff that just happened in Nashville. John, as a dispatcher, how do you, and I know you guys broke this down, but how do you, if you were to put yourself in that spot, I think that what I heard seemed very, very concise. All the communication was great. Like that thing went as well as it probably could have gone.
Well, sometimes when you drop the toast, it lands butter side up. Like sometimes you just get lucky and things go well and things flow. And sometimes that's a result of good training, but sometimes like the cards are just stacked in your favor. And sometimes like God just wants good things to happen. So that's the reason for that. And it could be a combination of all of those things. But when you have a situation like that, like we've talked about that before, but you have kids in the school that are going to dial 911, parents, teachers, anyone on the grounds, people are going to text people elsewhere. You're going to get deluge 911 calls from people outside, parents who are going to say, my kid's getting shot at and I'm driving to the school. And all of a sudden you need more police officers to keep the parents outside. Like it's from a logistical and communication standpoint, it's a nightmare. And if it went well in Nashville, I hope that's the case. And anyone who contributed to excellent communications there, dispatchers are part of coordinating that effort. They're not getting praised in the social media and the regular media like these cops are. The police officers deserve credit for good work. Excellent job. They won the Super Bowl of being a police officer, in my opinion. That's fantastic. The dispatchers are getting less obvious credit. So I guess on this forum, I'll just say great job to you guys and whoever was running the radio that day, because that response was great. And I know that dispatchers were a part of that.
Well, we know so many that haven't gone that well. And I, luckily, knock on wood, I have only been a part of 2 active, quote unquote, active shooter dispatches. Responded, and we stayed, the fire department staging wherever we're supposed to stage at. And luckily they were nothing. And that's what we want. But the scary part is it's happening so much more, so much more often. But to watch those guys, that body cam video that I watched, I mean, what they said, I'm trying to remember, 13 minutes from time of dispatch, from a time they made entry, it was 2 minutes, 2.5, I think, roughly, that they neutralize the suspect. I mean, they say the national average is, and all our training has been 8 minutes from the time that either subject's neutralized or they do it themselves. So, like, just watching that, and that's just a recent current event, watching those guys go in and the stacks, the way they were doing it, clearing rooms. having a police officer sitting here in the room with us, I mean, I think they couldn't. I don't feel, my personal opinion, Jason's personal opinion, nobody else's. I don't feel they could have done any better.
I think somebody mentioned it earlier. They talked about a home run, grand slam, whatever, of police response. I'd say that and more. Look, here's one of the things we get killed in society with terms, so active shooter, right? What is an active shooter? So we picture that in Nashville. We picture these most horrible scenes, Uvalde, Texas, the one in Connecticut. These things are the scenes that we pick at active shooters. But the people who make statistics, and Dan Carroll, you're probably one of those guys that's real good at quoting different people.
Absolutely.
There's liars, damn liars, and statisticians.
And then lawyers.
but the people, so if
how are we looking, Dan? He just steals other people's quotes.
If Marty said it was all right. He said it was all right. He doesn't even know where he got it.
If two thugs have a quick bullet exchange somewhere close to a school, they're going to call that, an active shooter situation, and they both run separate directions. Is that an active shooter like what we pictured in Nashville? And no, it's not. So when you say these numbers are way more, there are still fairly isolated incidents, the actual nightmarish ones that we've seen. There's way too many, because one's too many. 1 in 10 years is too many. 1 in 1 year is too many. But we seem to have a couple a year somewhere across the country. And, I have to tell you, Texas, the response in Texas had me embarrassed as a police officer. They sat around and sat on their hands, and children are dying. And I'll never understand how that happened. And one thing I always like to say is, I was in the Army, but I wasn't an Army Ranger. I wasn't a Navy SEAL. I do not consider myself on the scale of bravery real high. I just consider myself kind of an average Joe, or an average Dan, since we're on a show of a couple of Dans.
Yes.
But if children are dying through that door, and I have an ability to possibly stop it, and even though I'm not no badass, I'm going through that door, and I'm going to do everything I can to save lives. And that's what they did in Nashville. And I loved the video, push. They're pushing each other and pushing themselves to go and find that threat and take that threat out. And that's exactly what we should do. And that's exactly, back to Cincinnati Police, that's where we've trained, because, we went, the big change was Columbine. Everything was about SWAT. And I spent 22 years on the SWAT team, but as a negotiator, again, not as one of the tough guys, but as a negotiator. And before Columbine, the thought was always like, something like that's going down, we're going to call SWAT. But we realized when people are dying, you cannot call SWAT. You get paid, as a union guy, because I'm always pushing for pay raise, you get paid a reasonably decent pay. I don't want to say great pay. You get paid a reasonably good salary, but it's beyond money. It's, you took an oath. And if you respond to something like that, you have to go, and you have to act immediately. You have to do stuff to save lives. We went from what we called quad, which was right after Columbine, I think. It's hard to find dates and years once you've done over 35, but where we would wait for 4. All right, we're not going to wait for SWAT anymore. SWAT takes a couple hours, right, to organize, or at least a good hour to organize a lot of times. So let's wait till we have 4 policemen, and we'll go in, and that way we're going to have a back watch, somebody to look right, somebody to look left, and somebody to go straight ahead. And we've left that now. You're the first to arrive. You go. And now everything is like within reason, and this is a hard thing to put everything into a text, because everything is so unique in police work. This ain't like following the steps when you're baking cookies. This is real life.
Yeah, and there's so much gray area.
There's so many different factors. There's so many different things that can come into making a decision. So if I'm pulling up to the active shooting and I hear right behind me another policeman, maybe is it reasonable to wait 15 seconds for him to be there with me? Yes. Is it reasonable to wait for 15 minutes while people are being killed? The answer is no. Where is that in between? I don't know. Each and every case will decide itself. Are you waiting because you want to be a better, more effective force, or are you waiting because I just don't want to go in? That's to be found in your own heart. But yeah, the Nashville thing, those guys had to be scared. And back again to what I said. I've never considered myself, one of the tough guys. I know a lot of the really tough guys. I served with them on SWAT. I know I'll do what I have to do when I have to do it. I might have to have my pants cleaned out afterwards, or a change of pants, I should say. And that's okay, because we're not going to have a police department of 950 former Army Rangers or former Navy SEALs.
Right.
It's just not realistic. But you have to have people that say, you know what, I'm going to take the measures I have to take. I pray to God I never have to rush in the middle of an active shooter. But if that day comes, that day comes, and that's what I'll have to do.
Well, to my way of thinking, and I think that was a beautiful speech you just made.
Tap it.
That when in a situation like you had in Tennessee, you had one or two guys who took that leadership position and said, we are going to go in, we're going to take this guy down. And then it makes it a lot easier for the other guys to say, yes, I'm going to follow this guy and go in there and get it done. And I think when you look at Uvalde, that's what didn't happen. And then Jonathan, I just want to follow up with you a question on that. But before I do, we want to work in one of our sponsors here, and it is Kerry Wolfangle. And when it comes to real estate across Cincinnati or around the world, the two names to know and trust are Comin and Shepherd Realtors and Kerry Wolfangle. Everyone wants a realtor who knows the market, but for Kerry, it's a lot more than that, because she builds her business on a relationship of honesty and trust with her clients. Kerry has been recognized with many of the highest awards in the business, and she is the only real estate agent that we recommend. So if you or maybe someone you know is interested in buying, selling, moving in, or moving out, you want to contact Kerry Wolfangle. You see the number on your screen right now, 513-265-3125, or kwolfangle, that's the email, kwolfangle@comi.com. Your road home starts at Wolfangle.
That was the
Thank you very much.
Best one yet, Dan.
Well, I've only read it about 100 times now, so it's pretty good.
You've been hitting Sylvan pretty hardcore the past 6 months too, buddy. Good job.
But Jonathan, my question to you about we talk about Uvalde, and we talk about what happened in Tennessee, and Dan and I talked right after Uvalde happened, and we talked about just when those initial reports were coming up about the delays that police had getting in there. And it turned out in Uvalde, there were kids who were calling 911 and talking about, hey, the shooter's in my classroom. And we hear that. Do dispatchers typically have that information? And maybe it's different agency to agency, but do you have that information? And would you ever consider passing that information along to someone who's in the field at that scene and encourage them and say, look, this is the information I have, and it's up to you whether you act on it or not?
Well, first of all, I want to come at what I'm about to say with a place of respect for the police officers that are in your room there. I'm not a police officer. I'm just a guy. Okay. But I want to say this about Uvalde. And I've been to Southwest Texas. I've been to Eagle Pass and some of those towns down there. And they're small towns. They're desolate. They're separated from each other. There's not a lot of people there. And I want to say that Uvalde police is not Cincinnati police. Why is there a police officer working for Uvalde? Because the post office wasn't hiring. The people that you have in the police department are who you get down there. And what I want to say about that is that we've got to stop shitting on the Uvalde Police Department, because one of the officers who responded to that scene lost a child inside that room. Okay, that guy killed 22 people in 6 minutes. And then after that, you don't know if it's a barricaded subject situation. You don't know if there's still people there in live. You don't know if you're going to bang down the door and not get it open, and then he starts opening fire again. So that situation was confusing. Now, through retrospect, you really can't say anything other than, of course, we should get in there. We should kill the guy as fast as possible. Of course, I wish that had happened. But, we've got to stop eating our own on that, because nothing can be done about it now. And these guys have to live with this the rest of their lives, that happened on their watch, and that every other police officer in the whole country doesn't respect them. And you get guys like me. I'm going to put me in this and not other people, because I would like to say about myself that, I'm a lawfully armed citizen, that had I been there, that I would have been brave enough to just break down that door and kill that guy. I would like to say that. I've never been in that situation. So, and again, I'm not being disrespectful to anyone in that room, because you've been in more situations than me, but we've got to stop saying, well, if I had been there, it would have gone this way, because you just don't know. And we don't know what broke down in the hallway there. We don't know what happened, and we can't undo it. And so, we can criticize the leadership. We can do the whole after action thing, but we still don't even have all the facts. We don't know every single thing that went down. And it's just, it's a very unpopular stance to take, but I just wish we would just wait to learn more about what happened, because I don't believe that every single police officer that was there just was too timid to go through the door. That's my personal belief. It's not based on anything else than that. You have something to say? I'll take the criticism. Go ahead.
Jonathan, I'm actually not going to criticize you. I'm going to kind of echo, and it goes to something that I've said, and I think we have said. There are a lot of people that have not worn the duty belt, clocked in, and been the one that is being paid and knows they need to go where everybody else is running away from. And there is a shit ton of Monday morning quarterbacks in law enforcement, against law enforcement, that happens on all the mainstream media. And I, for one, everybody thinks they live in a glass house, but yet they're going to throw some freaking stones. And it irritates the shit out of me, especially when the mainstream media puts up a 10-second video of an officer fighting with a subject. Let's see the whole 10-minute video, not the 10-second video, you asshole. And you question these officers that come from every walk of life. And like Dan said, they're not all Navy SEALs. They're not all Army Rangers. They're regular people. I need a job. Shit. Okay. I'm going to do the best I can. And those people that are criticizing and analyzing the next day, the after action, most of them have zero freaking training. I know in Cincinnati, since 01, I believe 02, we have the Citizens Review Commission or something. I think
don't get them started on that.
We have this Citizens Review Committee, and I can't remember what it's made up of, but their whole job is you get a complaint. You get a complaint against an officer. Guess what? That officer is taken off the street now, tied up with a bunch of Monday morning quarterbacks that weren't there, didn't know the situation, didn't know the tension that was going on, don't know shit, haven't lived through something similar where it went ass backwards, and that officer is thinking about that at the same time. They weren't there. So I hear what you're saying in regards to the Texas thing, and truly, let the chips lay where they are, learn from it, move on. Those officers are going to be living with it the rest of their freaking life, dealing with it. And we were talking PTSD and mental health. Damn. Can you imagine, one, dealing with that shit show? You were one of the officers there when 22 died. Secondly, every time you turn the fucking news on, excuse my language, but the news on a mainstream, when you got another school shooting, they're going to bring that up and criticize you again.
Yep, you're forever.
That's why they put bullets in their own mouths. It's sick. Yeah. It's sad, and it's a tragic way that our society is going with social media proliferating it even more.
Yeah, it's sad that they have to live with being the bottom standard now. Okay, so we can't compare it to the school shooting of the week. Well, we did better than the one that happened last month. They're always going to be the standard of, well, at least we weren't Uvalde. And I got, like, God's sakes, like, I wish that hadn't happened. I wish all those kids were still alive. I wish that piece of shit had just decided to just end his misery on his own instead of taking it out on other people. Yeah. But just remember, these police officers have to live with it now forever. And like I said, there was a police officer standing outside the classroom that his son was in. So let's not like necessarily doubt to the last man that every one of those police officers was hesitant to go in there, because we don't know what happened in there.
Well,
maybe we'll never know. But
that was my allotted monologue. But just know that you're not alone on that.
But also with that example, you can throw out that the fact the incident command system was not established the way it should have been established.
Right. Yes, exactly. And so, the question I was asked initially about 911 calls, there was one dispatcher working. Okay. Imagine how many 911 calls you get in. It's now to the point where your 911 calls coming into whatever the PSAP is for Uvalde, they're not getting their calls anymore. Okay. Calls for what's going on in that school are going out to neighboring jurisdictions.
Right.
Those jurisdictions are taking the calls. They're trying to forward it into Uvalde. They're hearing all this shit. They can't get calls forwarded in. Guys, 911's a phone line, okay? It's a physical piece of infrastructure. And once there's already electrons passing through that because someone's on the phone, you cannot put another caller on that. There's one person in that office that had no way to triage the calls that were coming in. They were talking to little kids at one point. When do you know when to hang up on a caller? Okay, you've got, like, let's just throw a number out there. Let's say it's 100 911 calls. You've got 5 for every dead person in there. How do you know when to hang up because this person has no information and when to move on? And as far as getting information out, okay, so you're taking a call from a kid. If I'm on the radio with a kid saying the shooter's in this room right now, you can bet your ass that I'm going to hit mute and I'm going to hit the pedal. And I say, I've got a child in the room who says the shooter's in the room with him. So I'm just going to give that information out. There's no hedging. There's no worry. There's no worrying about whether or not even the shooter, if he has a police radio right there next to him, there's nothing that I can hide from him that's going to take away his tactical superiority in that situation. So I'm just going to tell them for less stuff. Obviously, I will just take tactical or important information and I put it into the CAD, the information sharing system. But for something like that, for me to stay calm on the radio, like you can tell I'm getting upset that it's a hypothetical situation. But to answer your question directly, if I'm talking to a kid who has a gun pointed at him, my voice is going to be shaking and I'm absolutely going to transmit it. But what am I fighting for? Am I going to be able to transmit? Because this radio doesn't even go into the building and everyone's talking on this talk group or this channel. Who even knows if they're on a digital talk group in Uvalde? We could have a UHF channel down there where we have 10 people talking and the radio's just soup. It doesn't even work anymore. If it could penetrate an aluminum or metal building, we don't even know what's going on over that radio channel. I haven't heard any radio traffic from Uvalde. I don't know what that 911 dispatcher was putting out. I don't know what the police were hearing or not hearing. And that's another just big piece of the puzzle of we don't know what was going on. Did we hear gunfire and police officers should run in there? Yes. Okay. We've established that, but there's other parts that we still don't know about. And that's why I just haven't made up my final opinion on Uvalde. And I may never know those things. And I'm ranting. Go ahead.
No, and that's something like, so I see, fire journals, internet stuff. And I see when mostly when bad shit happens to firemen or they did something dumb, that shit gets posted. I didn't know if dispatchers have that same, like if they have their own little internet page or whatever, like where you grab that stuff. I have no idea.
Well, you just heard him talking about the type of differences in dispatcher. You have apparently one call taker there who's also a dispatcher. I've seen agencies that are like that compared to big agencies like ours, and it's good information. It's good input that this gentleman's having. My differences are when you're on the scene and you know where you are, you're in a school, you hear shots fired, but I don't want to go on and on about that. I'd rather go on about the points in which I do agree. And that, you have an impossible way to flow information when you're talking about even a complete dispatch center where you have call takers who are sending messages, essentially instant messages, instant emails to a board, to a dispatcher who can then, filter what needs to be put out and what doesn't need to be put out. So there's no doubt the whole system was overwhelmed. I think there was system failures, but I also think there was personal failures, and I guess we'll leave it at that.
In Cincinnati, though, Dan, let me ask you this question because I'm curious about it based on what John said and what we've kind of been talking about. I know budget issues, and I'm not dragging on firemen, but I know they've got a lot more toys, a lot more equipment and equipment needs. They claim. On the budgets, are you, other than salaries, are you also at the table arguing for better equipment, newer equipment, additional equipment, and things that you've seen in other cities that are comparable or bigger that we could utilize here in Cincinnati?
Sure. I mean, that's an ongoing battle that's probably been throughout the history of unions being involved in representing police officers. Pretty famous story about Cincinnati Police Union goes all the way back into the 70s, where we had a number of officers killed in like an 18-month span, 2 at one time and a couple others near that. And at the time, police officers, and this sounds crazy nowadays, they were asking for .357s instead of the little .38s they were carrying, and they were asking for bulletproof vests and hadn't had either one of them. And the famous story is the FOP president at the time, a guy named Elmer Dunaway.
Elmer Dunaway. Yeah.
There is a book, I believe, written by his wife that I read, short little book called Under the Cowboy Hat. And Elmer organized a mini strike where, totally against the law, but they surrounded City Hall with the police cars. They turned the wheels far to one side to make them harder to tow. I guess something back then, the way cars were designed back then, they made it harder to tow. And they all took their police keys, and I think they were supposed to throw them down the sewer, but I think they backed off a little bit and threw them in a box. And everybody went home. Now some supervisors and some other people stayed back, and the worst of the worst emergencies were being handled. But it got the point across. And just like I talked about my little demonstration on Facebook about the police radios, we are always looking for more equipment. Tasers is something that's really changed policing so much. I could say without tasers, we would probably have more. Not probably. There's not even a doubt. We'd have a lot more deadly uses of force. So when you use a taser, it doesn't make the news. When you use your firearm, it makes the news. So there's a lot of instances where you use your taser and everything gets handled, and we avoid the litigation and everything else that comes with a shooting. And of course, we avoid.
Don't people still want to sue when they get tased, though?
Sometimes
don't they
might.
Lawyer up right away and I got tased for no reason?
It's a lot bigger. It's a lot bigger lawsuit when a family member has died after a police involved action and shooting. So with the number of guns that we have out there now, there's still going to be obviously occasions where police officers use deadly force, but sharp objects, edge weapons, different times there's where tasers are used, and just people flat refusing or want to fight the police. We can use tasers, and stops that hand-to-hand combat, which isn't good. Speaking of me not being a tough guy, I'm going on 57 years old. If I was still out on the mean streets now, I have no business wrestling around with some 22-year-old that just got out of 18 months in the joint lifting weights every day. And so the taser is
kind of like Rob Herking.
Yes,
that's what he looks like.
So the taser is a weapon that has changed policing dramatically, and that goes back to what you said about equipment. Equipment changes the way you do your job.
And you were talking as well, and I'm curious about this. The after action reviews for officer involved shootings. I know the body cams are reviewed. Is there somebody else that is reviewing any hand-to-hand taser use videos to stockpile a catalog on this could have been an officer-involved shooting, but it did not involve that? It did not get to that point, because I think that'd be important to show. You only see on the news the officer-involved shooting when they're bashing the PD for some reason, but there's been a shit ton of restraint shown by law enforcement, I'm sure, in videos that have not made the light of day.
That's one of the things that gearing up with this Frontline Advisors group I talked about earlier. We're going to put together a YouTube channel, and we're going to start showing a lot more of those complete stories. You talked about it, showing the 10 seconds rather than the 10 minutes. Body worn cameras aren't going anywhere. Let's face it. They are, they're forever now going to be part of policing. One of the things that I think is just ignored is that everybody believes that the camera never lies. And the fact is the camera lies all the time, because the camera only shows right here. It doesn't show what's going on over here, or what maybe everything that you hear.
Doesn't show the totality. Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't show what you might smell some gunpowder. You might, there's different senses that come about and help you make decisions that somebody that's sitting in their easy chair on, Monday morning, putting their feet up going, oh, the officer should have done this and this and this.
Well, a lot of times the body cam video creates a lot more questions than it answers, does it not?
It certainly can. And here's the ultimate thing is whether or not we are going to trust our police officers or not, because if you're going to believe that everything that happened outside of the camera was the police officers doing wrong before there was body worn camera, you're going to translate what you see in body worn camera and decide that that's wrong too. And so you have a large percentage of society, a culture in society that's always going to say the police officer did inappropriately. And the body worn cameras help on individual cases. In general, I think that we've created a world where nothing happens unless it is recorded. And as much as we got cameras everywhere, we can't record every angle, and we can't record every sense that is absorbed by a police officer. And so therefore, I think they also provide a disservice while they're providing a service. And it's just back to the old imperfect world again. The body worn camera thing is imperfect. Policing is imperfect. The world is imperfect. And you're going to have people that are going to be out there targeting cops all the time and always criticizing no matter what. And then you're going to have people, hopefully more and more, when we can communicate with society, communicate with the people out there and get them to understand our job a little bit better, and therefore understand that back what I was talking about before, if you're going to throw people into chaos and expect that they don't get a speckle of mud or two on their shirt, you're not being realistic. And this gets to something that I've been in the media talking about a lot. You're going to end up having trouble recruiting reasonable, decent people to do the job. And if you no longer have people doing this job, you will no longer have a civilized society. So you got to make up your mind. You're going to have to decide whether or not you let these folks be human, not perfect. You let them be human and back them up, or you decide that, every time you step outside the door, you're going to have to wonder whether or not you're going to get bashed over your head for your wallet.
Exactly.
And so that's what that's what society is going to have to decide on their own. Right now, they're headed down the wrong path. And I'm hoping that they get their senses together and realize, if somebody totally screws up, a cop's criminal. Even though me and this gentleman disagree about Uvalde, I think there's a certain point where even somebody who is 100% a rah-rah police fan has to say, hey.
We have to drink. When you say 100%, we have to drink.
Oh, okay.
You did it. Just stumbled right into that one. That's all right.
The guest did it.
So,
the guest was the first
even there,
one.
when in your heart you feel like, man, we did something bad, I think you got to be able to come out and say it. And but like I said, I'm the guy that's cheerleading and giving people a break. And, the cops got to really screw up before I go, ooh, this is Memphis. I mean, how do you defend Memphis? I mean,
that was exactly the point I was going to make. And I wanted to apologize to you, Mr. President. Like, I know you probably just came on here to have a good time, and I kind of came at you. I'm kind of from a...
I don't care. People come at me all the time.
I'm from a different show.
That was mild to some of the shit I've heard before.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty mild.
We disagree a lot more. But
I make it through my union hall meeting somehow. So
I completely agree with you on those Memphis guys. All 5 of those guys were all hired since 2020. How many police officers were made miserable in 2020 and hung it up and went home and retired early or just became firefighters? And then we hired these 5 guys to go out there to be Memphis PD, and look what happened.
Yeah.
So you're saying people are going to have to choose soon. No, we're already there now. We're already looking at 2023. We're already 3 years deep. We have people on the streets who were hired in the defund era. And this is the quality of police officer that you get. And to your point about society and law and order, this is what's happening. You have police officers who aren't fit to be that person who enforces it. So,
didn't 2 or 3 of those guys have previous records, though?
I think I don't remember,
or at least some contact with the system. I know.
But yeah, what a nightmare. That was terrible. Speaking of when I speak out, I was probably one of the first people to say I did not understand what I saw in the George Floyd thing. Now, whether he was guilty of murder or not, I don't know the Minnesota law in and out. I didn't listen to all the autopsy reports, but I sat there like, why in the hell is he still kneeling on that guy's neck? I couldn't imagine it and I came out and I said so. And so if you don't at some point say that we screw up, because we do, doctors screw up, Even lawyers screw up. Everybody screws up at some point or another. And yeah, I know you're not. I don't think you're a lawyer.
Even the Twitter's wrong
I
sometimes.
was going to say some lawyers more than others, but that's all right.
But
I don't put 9-hour front doors up.
But again, this is the rarest of jobs where you go in. People always talk about going into the gunfire. What you go into more often, especially in inner city policing, is you go into batshit chaos, and you get dispatched to stuff that just makes you want to pull your eyeballs out. It's like, what in the hell's going on? The family situations, neighbor situations, neighborhood situations.
I don't know how you do it. I really don't.
And it's getting tougher. Yeah.
I mean, day in and day out, you deal with the lowest of low lives on the street every single day, and that's not even the stuff that makes the news. I mean, that's just the regular humdrum stuff every single day. You're going to be out there dealing with those people, and they're out there day and night, 24/7, and that's the kind of crap you do. And I mean, I've seen a little bit of it. I mean, just a small percentage of what you deal with every day, and I know I couldn't do it.
Well, the cops are on in Cincinnati. They're on 10-hour days now. 10-hour days is a blessing. It gave you 52 extra days off a year, one more day off every. I started in 1987. We were on a 6-2 schedule, and you rotated around, and you had some 3-day weekends. So we were only working 8 hours. And most of the time you're actually on the street for maybe, 7. You had your roll call, and you had your at the end when you're quitting or whatever. And I remember in some of the neighborhoods I work in, we would have 15 or 20 radio runs in a single evening. And a lot of those were like family troubles and things. And everybody you talk to on a third shift, everybody was intoxicated to a level to where sometimes I could barely even speak. And I imagine what it would have been like if I would have had a body worn camera on back then. Because somewhere around family trouble number 10, you're
and then you got John talking to you going, I can't understand a single word that this son of a bitch is saying. It's on you, sir.
Your ability, your patience and stuff changed quite a bit by the time the end of the evening came. And so, like I said, by the grace of God, I didn't have a body worn camera on all the time back then. We had our repeat customers. I mean, there was like there
was a house on a Friday night at 7:45 when bowling league was done. I would just kind of stage there in Goshen because I knew I'd get a domestic violence.
Oh, you're gonna get called there every night. I mean,
every Friday.
I had a run, and this year I'm losing my political correctness. So we used to call it the fat people run, and it was a bunch of these very obese ladies, and they had one skinny guy, and they would get drunk at least once a week, and they would fight with one another, and
might have been foreplay.
It was
like Dan's house.
Who got the bang to do that night?
Yeah, it was crazy.
They went over to Carol's house for a 3-way.
He's one and done.
That was just one of the common radio runs that I had on my B. Is like, as soon as you heard the address, you went, oh no, here we go again. And that's the way. That's the way. What like talking about dispatch? Like, can they filter this? Like when you get this address, I won't say the actual address because who knows? Well, it's 1234 Main Street, and it's like, oh no, not 1234 Main Street again. I had a lady. When I was at District 5,
I would think at that point the dispatcher knows. You're getting screwed over. Yeah,
I had a lady that cut herself almost like on a bi-weekly basis, and not to where she would need rescue. And I think they knew, and they wouldn't send fire rescue. They just like, and the dispatchers talk about the relationship with the dispatchers. They'd say 502, 502, go ahead. Sherry's at it again. And here in the city, we kept things pretty professional. Normally it's like 502, respond to 3235, Clifton Avenue, accident with injuries, red Volkswagen involved. That's the way you do it most of the time. But it gets so worn out on certain calls. It'd be like 502, 502, go ahead. Sherry's at it again.
502, you know where you're going.
I just go, okay. And so I'd go over to the apartment and I'd say, Sherry, cutting again. Yeah. And I think she actually got to know me as Dan. Like, hey, yeah, Dan, I'm cutting again. I go, okay, let's go to the hospital. And I'd walk her down, get in the car, and like, how's your cat and stuff. We'd have conversation on the way because there was no sense and getting angry about it or frustrated about it. It was just part of the job.
There was an older lady that would call me on Sunday mornings at 9 out in Bethel, bitching about the neighbor's cats shitting in her yard. She could care less. All she wanted, she had cookies made and coffee. She wanted somebody to talk to because her grandkids and her kids didn't bother. I mean, I knew every Sunday morning I was going to have coffee and cookies with this lady. It was like a grandmother.
Yeah.
And I'm 21. I'm like, shit, I'm living by myself. I'm in college. Why not?
And that's a shit that fucking John deals with, hey, I just need somebody to talk to, or hey, send somebody. What's the problem? Because I've heard John say it. I don't know. Like, what's the problem?
Yeah, with suicidal subjects, we get them every week. But yeah, I mean, definitely, you got me laughing there with the lady who was talking about her neighbor's cat shitting in her yard. I can't tell you the time a lady called me and she had somebody had left a Ziploc bag full of dog shit under her windshield wiper, and she wanted us to send it off to the state lab for DNA typing because we were going to get to the bottom of that case.
That happens all the time, doesn't it, John? I mean, come on.
I tell you, the most nervous I've ever been on a call was not so much a burglary or a robbery in progress. I'm 21, a woman in labor, active labor. Her water had broke, and she was. That's one where you wish these son of a bitches in the fire department were not sleeping all night and they'd hurry the hell up. I'm like, don't push. She's like, I gotta push. Don't push. Hold on, I can hear them. They're coming. Hold on, don't push. Don't push.
I have no idea what I'm doing.
I actually, I understand.
You've birthed some babies, haven't you?
3.
There you go.
3 too many.
Sadly, my wife
I have not
physically
birthed them, by the way. But I've assisted with the birth, and it's 3 too many, and I don't want to do that
about
shit
your lack
ever
of
again.
fiber last week. Are you sure you didn't birth
Hey,
something?
real quick, we got one more ad read after this, but I'm going to put out our little contest game. I can't say contest. Game that we have set up for the One More and I'm Out of Here podcast. So we're calling it Subscribe-a-Palooza. I'm going to post this on all our socials. I'm going to just kind of ad-lib it. I'll post it up here on the screen, even though you probably won't be able to read it because there are a lot of rules. Because we want to keep you guys honest. I just got to find it.
I know the contests get into the legal stuff a little bit.
Essentially, if you are already a subscriber of the One More and I'm Out of Here podcast, take a screenshot, email that to admin at one more and I'm out of here, all spelled out, .com, or hit us on our socials, Instagram or Facebook. You get an entry, your name gets thrown into the hat. Do that, and then you go to your favorite audio platform, download, show us that it's downloaded, send a screenshot of that, your name goes in again. Typically, most of them, if you're downloading it already, you can leave a review. And then if you refer a friend, and however you got into it, whether it's email or Facebook or Instagram, we get the handle. You have them acknowledge that you referred them. Your name goes in the hat, plus their name goes in the hat if they did the subscription plus download. So what we're doing this from today on until the 30th. We're going to draw a name randomized. We're going to get an online randomizer. We'll keep track of everybody that logs in, does it. And you will get a very cool prize from our friends at Engraved in USA. But you get to pick what part of the drinkware off their website. The website will be on the flyer. It's going to be posted on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. If you do Twitter, we really don't hit Twitter that much, but we'll put it there as well. But grab somebody, get somebody else involved. But if you're already subscribed, send us a message.
There you go.
Read through the instructions. Social media, it's up now. It'll be on the website as well. Ohio Valley Productions, thank you very much for all you do. Dan Varner, Varner Foundation. All donations go to 100% of the donations go to the children and help the children. There is nothing taken away from it, so every dollar counts. It's one for one. I want to thank Dan Hils for being on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for coming out, man.
It is our birthday. It's our 1 year anniversary. We do have a special cake here. Quite good. It's got our logo on it. We'll
Should
show
hold it up to the camera, Rob, so everybody can see it.
Dan, I saw you walk in here. Why don't you get your ass up for once and
Well,
you
I
hold
could,
it up?
but I want to say something to Dan before I leave.
Oh, it's going to be another monologue.
I'm going to say one more and I'm out of here. But Dan, great having you here. Thank you so much for being here. But we would be remiss if we did not mention we're about 48 hours removed from Springfield Township Police losing one of their own, Tim Unwin, who was tragically lost in he was behind the wheel during a traffic mishap, and he was killed in the line of duty, and unfortunately, so was the driver of the other car. But it just goes to show, something we've talked about a lot, how dangerous this job is, even on the most routine. Nothing is routine. You talk about a routine call, routine night, routine day. Nothing is routine. This is probably some kind of call this guy responded to hundreds of times, and now he's gone.
I will alter that just a little bit. He was responding on officer needs assistance, and you can call it officer needs assistance or PO needs help. And obviously, there's an adrenaline surge. I think one of his brother officers up there in Springfield Township was in a fight and called for help. And naturally, when you hear that, there's an adrenaline rush, and you got to get there.
So you want to go, yeah?
Yeah, you want to go. And so, it's just a terrible tragedy. And I thank you for bringing that up, Dan, because it points it out. And every year, we lose lots of cops to gunfire. Occasional, I think, still we lose cop to an edge weapon, but we also lose a whole lot of policemen behind the wheel. You're driving all day long. You're emergency responding a lot. I don't know if it already start raining when that happened. I know it was raining later in the morning when I got up, but I've heard it was just it was really a horrific scene. Again, more secondhand and firsthand conversations that I heard.
That Explorer did not look like a fucking Explorer.
Yeah, nothing
at all.
Nothing looked like it was even a car anymore, and so. It's sad. It's going to be a really hard time for Springfield Township Police Department. I'm not sure exactly their numbers. I think they're somewhere around 40, maybe 50 police officers at the most.
I think they're 50.
Yeah, so
they're right next to the municipality I work in.
So you're talking about a probably very close knit family, and for them to lose one of their own, they're gonna struggle for days, weeks, months, and even years with that loss. And I've said before I was on talk radio the other day, and I said, or no, actually, I think I was on the news, and I said that the one thing you can do is when that procession is announced, to get out and stand with your hand on your heart, hold a flag. That means so much to the family, and it means so much to the brother and sister officers when they see that. Folks are willing to step out and do that.
Yeah, that's a great thing about this community, because they always come out in force when something like that happens.
Jonathan Bates,
Thank you.
we want to thank you for coming on.
Final thoughts, Jonathan?
And the design, John, you did a great job. You're nasty on the comments. You don't even give a person a chance.
I brought all those people with me today. I brought the Fader Stop Army. I wanted to apologize to everyone, particularly the president, before he leaves. I'm sorry for ruining the show. He's leaving early.
You didn't ruin the show.
You
It was fine.
by no means ruined the show.
I guess I admit I get a little worked up because I dispatch in a town with one stoplight and it's blinking most of the time. And I look at those Uvalde guys and I just think like, well, it's scheduled here to happen at an unknown date. And I know that at some point we'll be the police department, or there's a sheriff's department that maybe doesn't respond as well as Nashville. And it's just because we're not Nashville. So I get a little defensive.
It's Nashville's not Cincinnati. Cincinnati's not Nashville. We're not Cleveland. It doesn't matter.
Did he leave because of me?
No. His wife's out in the other room.
Oh yeah, no.
He
He said, "Fuck Jonathan Bates."
Yep. He's like,
I'm
that
out.
son of a bitch.
I mean,
Now, what I was going to say about your little domain there, every comm center I walk into is dark. Is it because you guys are just like the Walking Dead ugly people and you're carrying it on at home?
It makes it easier to read the monitors. You got to read the monitors.
Both of you are right. It makes it easier to read. It's a more relaxing environment, but yes, we generally sound more sexy than we are. If you have a dispatch that you're talking to, you think, well, she sounds kind of sexy. Like and she's kind of flirting, when she says 10-4, there's a little extra something in it. You go in and see her and she's just an absolute sea monster. I mean, that's universal. That goes for every department. So,
I just want to know when you're going to come play the Funny Bone here in Newport, because I want to get some tickets now to come see your show. It's going to be great.
I have no idea what that means, but any day now.
He thinks you're a comedian.
I want to thank Deadleg, John, Falconator. God, I saw a lot of them throughout the course of this. The Wolfpack showing up again. Appreciate you guys 100%. And I'm empty, so I got to go out and get another one. But I'll do one. Trust me, I'll do one. It's 5:30 on a Saturday, for Christ's sake.
We brought in the failure to stop army, and I told him not one of them should subscribe to your show. That would be treason. So none of them will be taking part of your contest.
You're doing the Lord's work, sir. You're doing the Lord's work.
We're gonna see you guys out in 2 weeks, right? In Clayton.
Yeah,
12 days from today.
I'll be there a week from tomorrow.
Okay. Week and a half, buddy. Week and a half, man. John, if you're unable, I will push Deadleg across the street when we go bar hopping.
I'll push him down. That's about the only thing I'm going to do with that.
We'll tag team him, man.
I'm so sick of him just like being positive all the time. Like, I've been set back by all these things, but there's always tomorrow. I'm like, for the love of God, I can barely face tomorrow, and I have 2 functional legs. How am I supposed to deal with my bullshit when this guy who's in constant pain has a good attitude? He takes away the legitimacy of my complaints, and all of a sudden everything that's wrong in my life is fine compared to that guy.
You put some thought into this, haven't you? I love it.
It does remind you. He does remind you of Stuart Smalley. I think that's his name on Saturday Night Live, where he's like, "I'm
good enough. You're smart enough.
I'm smart enough.
He's
good looking enough. Gosh darn it, people like me."
He's so self-affirming, and he's so like self-actualized and a complete person. It absolutely pisses me off.
If he wrote a self-help positivity book, I would burn that son of a bitch.
Well, God, he just drives me nuts. Just always happy, always telling me you did a great show, did a great job. You're so funny, John. It's just like, I cannot wait to just take him out physically and just show that like all your positivity means nothing, because you cannot win a physical contest of combat versus
a physical contest.
Hopefully it'll be raining that day. That'll make it all much better.
I know it'll be like the last 30 minutes of the last Matrix movie. It'll be very good, except it'll be slower because I'm kind of old and my back hurts and his leg is also hurt. So it'll be but it'll be free. So you have to
my God.
If it's sunny out, do you have to carry an umbrella to cover the sun from hitting your pasty ass skin, John?
It's never sunny. I haven't seen the sun in 6 months. What are you talking about?
Holy
shit! It
shit.
snowed last night. April's over, or spring is here, and it's still snowing. I don't know what you're talking about.
We'll get you a new NASA suit, buddy.
Hey, I'm gonna say the same thing that Drew yells at you about. Jonathan, stay on. Don't leave.
Yeah, because we have to wait for it to upload at the end.
Don't you leave me, boo.
He's like my grandpa, where he thinks at the end I'm just gonna leave and ruin everything. I only did that one time, and now she's like, the podcast is over except for John. Please stay here for a few more minutes, John. Did you hear what I said?
That's why that shit's funny.
But you and I stay on and talk for like 20 minutes after the show anyway. I don't know why he just thinks I'm gonna disappear.
Falconator, by the way, we don't have the koozies online. However, we get them out for free. So show up over in Clayton. In a week and a half, we'll bring some down.
We got shirts though. We're
sure you throw them in the trunk.
We're getting ready to start some things. We're getting ready to start some things.
When these guys come out with merchandise, I say this out to the I'm out of here pack. You guys don't have a name, I guess. Buy their merchandise, and I'm going to tell you why. There's such a slim margin of merchandise that the best these guys could do, and I'm not putting them down, I'm saying for any podcast, is break even. Please buy their merchandise so that it just wasn't a massive waste of time for them. Buy the merchandise.
Yes.
I obviously need to have a talk with these guys because that's not the deal I was given. Thanks a lot, John. I appreciate that.
Sorry for ruining everything. I just say that
Yeah,
at
no
the end of every show I'm on. So
Well, he's
Breaking up the band, and
Dan hasn't put shit in from the get go.
Dan hasn't even paid the Varner Foundation $150 he owes him. We want to appreciate everybody watching, listening, etc. Subscribe, like. If you dislike it, I don't give a shit. Do that too.
if you want to hear a great podcast, go over to the Failure to Stop channel. You can hear us on Tuesday nights with Night Shift with Andrea up late. And on Wednesday or Thursday, you can hear Last Call with Eric Tanzi, who gives you all the news you need to not sound like an asshole on the weekends. Thursday nights, the Com Center with Drew Breezy, we break down 911 calls and police body cameras. And on Friday, you can watch Failure to Stop, the proper channel. We do the big case breakdowns. We bring it all down for you. 2 police officers, retired, can tell you the stories from the big blue line without having to give a damn about it. That's a great channel over there, folks.
Wow, that is awesome.
You can't talk like that during fucking Com Center. How's that?
Is awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
is Tanzi down there doing something to you right now underneath the table?
That's well, I do Com Center late at night after I've gone to work, so I'm almost dead by the time I do Com Center. So
how much speed did you do? Wow, that was good.
There's a couple lines right here. Yeah.
Were you a dead legs in Silver Bullet?
No.
The old school movie, The Kid in the Wheelchair, and the other one, Corey Haim Feldman, where they were both lily-ass white. Wasn't it Silver Bullet?
I have no idea where you're going.
Regardless.
Dead leg, send this guy that video clip of the kid in the wheelchair that rolls down the hill and then goes into the lake. I love that one. What movie is that?
I love that one.
That's my favorite.
You guys have fun. Have a good night. We're gonna have a little bit of cake, have some definitely more drinks, and we're gonna find out. We're gonna de-pant Dano.
We're a year old.
We're gonna de-pant Dano and find out the elusive question. Dan, do you manscape, buddy?